Yo, North here, back at you with another video. Today we're going to be returning to Power Scaling My Hero Academia. Today I'm going to be taking almost every villain in the series and ranking them weakest to strongest. I'll be doing this by breaking them into several tiers, in which I will do rankings within the tiers, though it should be noted that I do think the rankings are generally interchangeable. I think what matters more is more so just the tier they're in, and I think each tier, when interchanged and swapped around, would still work. So if you ever read My Hero or looked at the data books or wiki, you'll know that the villains have ranks to differentiate threat level. These ranks range from F to SS tier. I won't be using the ranks to determine my rankings, mostly because they aren't exactly contingent on strength alone, and more so the threat that the villain poses in the series. I'll be touching on some primary movie villains, but not their goons. I don't really care to watch the movies, so when I get there, I'll go ahead and touch on them. I won't be touching vigilantes because I just don't feel like going through the series again. Also keep in mind, every villain I rank will be ranked as individuals. I won't rank groups, except for an exception. You'll see why that is later. Anyway, let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting with the bottom of the bottom, the Hero Course tier. The name is pretty self-explanatory. These are the low-level thugs of the villain world. I'll be honest, the rankings at this level don't really matter to me. So if you disagree, I'll respect your opinion because I didn't really deep it all that bad. Because again, these guys pretty much suck. So to start this tier off, I'll just touch on some featless / honorable mention villains. We have Destro and OG Harima, or Mr. Compress's grandpa. Their names are held in similar regard to All For One when it comes to being great or influential villains, though we don't really know anything about them or their quirks at all. Also, being held in that regard doesn't necessarily mean they're powerful combatants. OG is known to be a Robin Hood-esque thief who takes from the rich and gives to the poor, and Destro was a renowned leader who opposed the government, basically what Destro is in modern age, except we don't know if he's actually strong. Next, we have Star Servant, who's like the old guy who Endeavor beats up in the Endeavor agency arc. He definitely looks cool, and his glass manipulation seems interesting, but all he does is absorb a bunch of glass and then run from Endeavor, who's clearly way faster than him. Then he just gets captured with like no fight put up. Endeavor's mere presence was burning this guy's throat. He's actually a bum. But touching on more bums, we have Dictator. He's the villain who Deku ran into when he was in his vigilante arc. He escaped from Tartarus under All For One. He's a puppet master, and he believes in strength in numbers. He was defeated by Crust in the past, implying that he could be a high-level threat and where a top 10 hero is needed to beat him. But we don't see anything from that, obviously, or we don't see him do anything on screen. He just gets one shot by Bakugo immediately, and he wasn't even any sort of threat to Deku at all. Though he was hired by All For One as an assassin, so I guess that means a little bit of something. Here we have Shin and Datoro. These guys are featless members of the 8 Bullets Overhaul. All they do is make Mirio drunk and then make him expose his own quirk. Then they shoot guns and throw knives at him, then just get one shot. I'm not ever gonna bother ranking these dudes, but the rest of the 8 bullets are safe. So at the bottom, we have Trumpet. Trumpet's quirk is basically just to enhance the mental states of his followers. And considering he has 1 stats and everything physical in the data books, I don't think he's really meant to be able to do anything on his own. We also don't even know how much his mental amp really amps people, since the people he amps are in themselves featless. Anyway, he's just a certified bum. And then next, I have a group. I know I said I wasn't gonna rank groups, but in this specific instance, I will just group these guys all together because there's really no point in touching on them individually. They all suck, and they're barely even recognizable as individuals. They get pieced up in one shot by Eraserhead. Even Shigaraki states these guys don't hold up to pro heroes. They do cause issues for some of the students, but like Todoroki and Bakugo make such light work of them, they aren't really worth anything. They're just a bunch of random dudes with quirks who decide that they want to do some bad shit and get beat up. Next, I have Toya. And no, this isn't Dabi. This is one of the 3 8 bullets. He's one of the 3 8 bullets that fights Sun Eater 3-on-1. Toya is for sure the weakest of the 3. He's easily restrained by Sun Eater, and his quirk lets him steal equipment, which let him steal items from him. But overall, he's for sure the weakest of the group at an individual level. I only put him above the people below him just because he was an 8 bullet. But it was stated that individually, these 3 are trash, but together they have great teamwork and can actually make a difference. Next, we have Chronostasis, Overhaul's aide. He's not a member of the 8 bullets, contrary to popular belief. His quirk lets him slow people down by hitting them with the clock hands on his head. He doesn't really do anything besides get knocked out by Mirio, but after having his head fixed by Overhaul, his clock hand is fast enough to intercept Eraserhead and slow him down. But this is an Eraserhead that's completely off guard, and he still reacts to it fast enough to push Deku out the way. He later is captured as he's trying to kill Eraserhead. He doesn't really show anything as far as real feats go. His quirk is definitely powerful if it can land, but he can't use the quirk while moving himself, so he has to basically stand still like a sitting duck. Overall, individually, I don't really think he's much of a threat unless he catches you off guard, as he did with Eraserhead. Next, we have Skeptic. His puppets are able to break the bones of Twice, who was hardened from training with Gigantomachia, but he's also having a mental breakdown at that point, and once he decides to fight back, he instantly bodies the puppets. It's not really a placement I thought on too much, because it really doesn't matter, but I would generally say he's pretty low ranking. Most of the Liberation Army dudes are more so intelligence or in leader roles, so it shouldn't really be much of a surprise that I'm saying he's weak, especially in contrast to everybody else on the list. Just like Star Servant, Ending is a random Endeavor villain with a slightly interesting quirk. He controls the lines on the street, which is weird because street lines are wholly artificial, so how does that naturally come to him as a quirk? Anyway, whatever. He's able to constrict and capture Natsuo, who we know does have his mother's ice quirk, but he isn't even a Hero Corps student and shouldn't be any stronger than like middle school Bakugo, who got caught by that sludge villain. I guess ironically, had he been caught by the sludge villain, Natsuo could have broken free maybe by freezing him. But anyway, that's besides the point. Ending literally just gets blitzed and beat up by Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki. He's a bum. And then next we have the actual sludge villain. He survived getting like dispersed by All Might Shockwave, but he literally just sludged, so like it's not durability, it's just his ability to survive. Also, he restricted a middle school Bakugo, but like I wouldn't say that really makes him strong, especially since we've only ever seen him do this to Bakugo. He does show up in the war arc, and I've seen the panels, but I kind of skipped over him because I didn't really care. But once he gets a hold of you, he's obviously a threat, but he needs to do that to be any sort of issue, and I don't think he's really fast enough to do that to most relevant characters, so who really cares? And then at the very top of this list, I'm going to go ahead and put Mustard. He's able to fill a very large expanse of a forest with poison gas, and just as it sounds, his gas is truly poisonous. Bypassing durability and causing enemies to fall asleep, it sounds powerful on paper, but the issue for Mustard is physically. He's a pushover, so much so that he even uses a revolver in his fight with Tetsu Tetsu. He was able to kick him around at a point, but this was only after it was stated his hardening was starting to weaken, maybe from being unable to breathe or being shot in the head. Admittedly, he's pretty strong in his own gas, but it should be noted that he wears a gas mask, so he's not even immune to his own gas. But yeah, basically no speed feats, no AP feats. He's a bum. Next, we have the pro hero tier. These are major threats to one or more experienced pros. Again, pretty self-explanatory. These are villains that can lead groups of grunts, should generally be comparable in strength to the top of the Hero Corps students or seasoned pros who don't really have crazy quirks. Or in some cases, they could just stack up to like pretty good pro heroes. So at the bottom I have Mimic. He's another Yakuza member, and he's not an 8-bullet member. He's the one who fuses into the building and controls the area, constantly separating the heroes. All of his direct attacks are basically defeated. He basically accomplishes nothing, even while amped up on quirk amping drugs. Overall, he is pretty strong, but it's hard to gauge it based on what he does. He just kind of separates people by cutting off their rooms and stuff. And his physical body gets one shot once they finally see him. This placement is honestly me being kind of lazy, since like he's constantly just doing random shit through the few chapters he's around. But I think he's definitely a pro hero level threat, considering he's literally screwing around with multiple pros when he does do anything, and they really can't do anything about him while he's inside the building. Next, I have this random headgear dude. He's beating up Mount Lady and Kamui Woods, both of which are very early in their careers. I'm pretty sure this is Mount Lady's debut, as a matter of fact. He just gets one shot by All Might. The reason he's here is obviously because Kamui and Mount Lady are brand new heroes, but they're still relatively strong. But we don't even see the full context of the fight, so we don't really know exactly how he ends up in that situation where it seems as though he is winning. But yeah, again, these rankings are interchangeable within tiers. So I think if you think he's really strong, then you could bump him up, but I think this is fine considering we don't even know who he is. Curious, she's able to react to weaken Toga's speed point blank, and her explosions are able to completely mess up Toga, both externally and internally, of course, when she ignites her blood. Her being able to ignite blood is a pretty good feat since it allows her to bypass durability. The issue is she doesn't really get any good speed showings, and once Toga awakens, she instantly just dies. Her AP is pretty good, but it's clear that her style is fighting through her followers, who then lead her opponents into landmines. I think Curious definitely fits better into a support kind of role. But yeah, we generally don't see anything from her physically. So I can't really say she would be able to beat up people higher on the list. Here we have Suramitsu. He's another one of the 3 bullets that Sun Eater fought. He's the one that can eat through anything with the bag on his head. The idea that his quirk can eat absolutely anything sounds crazy, but could very well be true, though we never see him eat anything beyond Sun Eater's tentacles, so I can't really say much more about it. Sun Eater is pretty durable, but at the end of the day, it's just an octopus tentacle. He seems to be able to eat at a very fast speed, but Sun Eater states clearly that he's moving faster than he ever could, so I wouldn't say he scales to him in speed, especially considering how he was being overwhelmed by 3 fighters at once. And then his teammate Yu Hojo, the last of the 3 bullets that we see fighting Sun Eater, he's the one who makes crystals. He's able to break free of Sun Eater's constriction with his own strength, and he even lands a hit on Sun Eater, but Sun Eater reacts even while distracted with the others. He was able to overpower Sun Eater at one point, but he defended the attack. The issue with Sun Eater is his strength varies extremely drastically, as he uses different foods in his arsenal and amps himself in different ways. Also, every time he was able to hurt Sun Eater, he was having his defenses stripped away. So I'd be hard strung to say he truly scales to Sun Eater in any real way, and I think this ranking is probably fine. Next, we have another group ranking. I know I said I wouldn't rank groups as one, but the regular Nomu from Hosu are really irrelevant. I'll just use the slot to encompass all of the regular Nomu and lower tier Nomu. So basically all the Nomu that are under high end and aren't the one from USJ, they all go here. Nomu generally easily fend off pro heroes, but are easy work for Endeavor, Gran Torino, and Stain, as seen in Hosu. They aren't all that strong, the lighter colored Nomu, but I don't think this placement is bad considering how many of them there are and what they do individually. One Nomu takes a casual blast of flames from Endeavor, and Endeavor even says that no one has ever stayed conscious from that blast. And one also moved fast enough for Gran Torino to make note of it, with Gran Torino being one of the fastest heroes, period. Here I have Kunita. He's able to defeat the likes of Fat Gum, who's one of the more powerful heroes actually, although his rank wouldn't imply it. Though this is mostly due to his quirk advantage, wherein his plants feed off the bodies of targets. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to downplay this feat. Beating Fat Gum is a good thing to have on your resume, but Fat Gum's ability comes from his fat reserves, which serve to increase his durability by hundreds if not thousands of times. And if you're feeding off his fat, you aren't directly interacting with his durability, therefore not really scaling to him directly. Not to mention Fat Gum isn't exactly the fastest guy. A more agile hero would likely make easy work of Kunita, especially seeing as his physicals are pretty bad, as he's just one shot by Aoyama and Hagakure's combo attack. And Aoyama's laser is pretty strong, but generally hasn't been shown to be able to just one shot anybody that's relevant. So yeah, I can't really put him much higher than that. Here I have Magni. Magni is capable of fighting with the Wild Wild Pussycats, particularly their strongest member Tiger, who does end up winning in the end. She's later shown pulling Overhaul in with her magnetism quirk before he really reacts, but again, this is just Overhaul off guard, so I can't really say necessarily it's her blitzing him, but she does genuinely damage him. But base Overhaul's durability isn't necessarily all that great. He had his arm broken by Mirio with a single punch, and also in that same instant where she got this feat, she's got turned to paste. So yeah, it's not really looking good for Magni. Here I have Kurogiri. Kurogiri is here because similarly to some people on this list, he can instantly win a fight. He doesn't have any real AP showings, but he's able to put up portals that let him just BFR you and teleport you out of the battle zone. He does have a decent speed feat for early series where he puts up some portals that stop early Shigaraki, Dabi, and Toga from fighting. And he is stated to be able to kill All Might by bisecting him with a portal. So alongside BFR, he also has durability negation via cutting somebody with his portals. He is also stated at one point to be like the perfect form of a Nomu, but his feats surely don't show as much. He also got off-screen blitzed by Stain, but we don't really see it. Stain is able to cut him and lick his blood and pin Shigaraki before Kurogiri even does anything. And Stain, as you'll see in just a moment, kinda sucks. So here he is, half Stain. He's an early series villain and thus has pretty trash scaling. He's faster than like a super early Shigaraki who's still wearing the hand on his face, so he's obviously not that impressive. And he's able to fight off a 5% Deku, early Todoroki, and Ida. But obviously that just makes his case even worse, as this is literally like the slowest form of Deku, barring his quirkless form. His quirk lets him paralyze anyone who's bloody ingests, and the length of paralyzation is based on the blood type. Of course, in a one-on-one fight, it doesn't really matter. Anybody he paralyzes is just gonna die. But he generally doesn't have any good AP feats. Though I will say, the way MHA tends to work, large AP differences don't really matter when it comes to like bladed weapons and stuff, it seems. Though it's pretty irrelevant, Stain actually shows back up later during the All Might and All For One fight. He was on some sort of like Green Goblin hoverboard and tries to sneak attack All For One in conjunction with All Might, but he just ends up getting completely obliterated and killed. I do think he'd take down somebody like Magni pretty easily. He is known for having killed over 40 pro heroes in the past, but I can't really say he's much stronger than anybody above him. If you use some sort of vigilante scaling, maybe you can get him a bit higher into the tier. As you'll see later, we do have some people that appear in vigilantes on this list. But for now, I think I'll just leave him here. Not that the in-tier rankings really matter all that much in these lower tiers, but I thought I'd just make note of that. Here I have Mr. Compress. He literally states that he can't fight heroes in training, and he in fact doesn't have any AP feats whatsoever. But he also has an ability that allows him to just instantly want to fight. Able to sneak up on Class 1A and capture Bakugo before he can even react. He's able to avoid Todoroki's ice early in the series, similar to Stain. I don't really think Stain beats him or vice versa 10 times out of 10, but I feel like more times than Stain would beat him, he'd put Stain in the marble and just end the fight. Especially considering that him alongside all the rest of the League of Villains were able to fight Gigantomachia for days on end. He also gets to show out a bit in the war. If you look a little deeper into things, I'm sure you can find something to scale him higher, but all he really does in the war that I recall was get captured by Best Genius before saving Shigaraki and Spinner out of their threads, and then getting completely blitzed by Mirio while trying to throw a marble at him. Though I will note that he was extremely fatigued at this point as he just maimed himself, so I don't want to downplay him too much, but he just generally hasn't shown us anything that is that impressive. Next, I have a weird placement. I have Moonfish. He's able to beat Bakugo and Todoroki at the same time early in the series, but he gets violated by Darkness Amp Dark Shadow. Though it's weird because later he shows up and he lands a single hit on Gang Orca and he actually damages him. which may not seem like much, but Gang Orca literally is able to fight near high ends in the war, who we know are super powerful. But it is weird because how would he have gotten so much more powerful while in prison when he can't use his quirk or train to any degree? But we also don't see the fight in full, so there's not much I can really say on it. And we do know that he got defeated in the end. So I can either say Moonfish is a threat stronger than Magni, where I have him here, or we can say he belongs in a tier above due to scaling the Gang Orca in some regard. Officially, I'll just put him here because of how questionable I think that feat is. And I think it's dumb for him to be like high-end tier after getting violated by that early series Dark Shadow. And not to downplay Dark Shadow, he's pretty strong. Every time he's in the darkness, he's shown some great feats. But I'll touch back on Moonfish later in the video. Next, I have Rikia. He's the biggest dude in Overhaul's 8 bullets. In base, he's a bit of a pushover. He fights Ryukyu and instantly is put down. She even states it was easy. But once he gets amped up from the quirk enhancement drug, he's able to use his quirk by just breathing, which let him absorb people's vitality through just breathing. After this, he puts up a better fight, but then again gets put down pretty easily by their teamwork. Though the fact that he was able to take Blast from Nezure, who's pretty strong in her own right, after the drug wore off already, wouldn't mean he's definitely stronger than somebody like Magni, but he may lose a matchup to somebody like, let's say, Kunita, with his quirk eating away at his large body, which is why I say the tiers are pretty interchangeable. But yeah, next I have Spinner. Spinner is a really weird one for me to place. It took me a bit of time and reading to come up with this placement. I was just going to put him at the top of this tier because he kind of seems to embody it the best, a villain that can lead a large group of grunts, but his feats really don't instill much confidence in me. Of course, you could say he survived fighting Gigantomachia with the rest of the league, but his strongest point is after he was granted 2 quirks by All For One, which would then go on to leave his mind completely mangled and leave him all stupid. He was able to fight Shoji while in this form in a back and forth fight, and President Mike's voice completely finished him off at the end. So it's really hard to say he's any stronger than the level of Shoji, who isn't all too impressive. Like, I'm sure if he fought some of these other guys in a fight in the series, he'd do really well, as he's kind of depicted to have like high durability or be like this super strong Hulk type kind of character. But scaling the Shoji, who just kind of doesn't do too much, makes it a hard sell. Shoji is actually considered the strongest physical fighter of the students, so maybe I'm just downplaying him a little bit, but I do think this placement is probably fine. Next, I have Hikiji. The only reason he's here individually is because I already said I wasn't going to rank groups, even though I've already broken that rule a few times. But he's another 8 bullet member. Hikiji is the shield to Kendo Rappa's spear. He's able to muster up a barrier which can take hits from base Fat Gum and Kirishima with no issue whatsoever, and his shield even takes punches from Rappa, his own teammate. It is eventually destroyed by Fat Gum's ultimate attack, but even after that, the maximum defense of this barrier is still able to soften the blow enough to the point where Rappa and Hikiji are still conscious afterward. Even if he isn't able to create any more barriers, the only issue is that he doesn't really have any offensive capability. But this ranking isn't necessarily based on who wins or anything, obviously, but who's stronger or more powerful. And if I think his durability far outclasses the offensive capability of basically anyone on the list before him, I don't see why I wouldn't rank him this high, especially since Rappa's attack did even less than Fat Gum and Kirishima. And I'm sure anybody on the list who would run up to Rappa would just get ripped up like butter by his punches, barring maybe Spinner and Moonfish. But yeah, obviously now we have Rappa, top of this tier. Another member of the 8 bullets, Rappa, or the Spear. His punches are strong enough to damage Fat Gum at his maximum fat levels, which is his max durability, and even crack Kirishima's hardening and get through his Unbreakable, who at this point should be possibly on par with some of Bakugo's stronger explosions, as his training routine is literally just taking explosions from Bakugo. Also, Rappa seems to be faster than any other 8 bullet members, and it's not even close. I don't see how any of those other guys even come close to him, and I think he fits best at the top of this tier. Next, I have the top 15 tier, or the city level threats. Here, I named the tier top 15 rather than top 10, which gets more of the focus specifically. I did this particularly for Gang Orca, who is the 12th ranked hero. Heroes in the top 10 are really strong, comparable to most pro heroes, with the vast majority of them being capable of taking on high-end Nomus and other high-level villains. Villains on par with this level of hero is amongst the strongest in the verse for sure. The baseline for this tier are characters like Best Genius, Edshot, Mirko, and other heroes like that. So to start us off is going to be Muscular. Muscular shows up early in the series, but he also shows up later. He's able to outpace a 5% Deku who says he can't match him in speed and goes out of his way to make his speed a non-factor. He then takes a 100% smash to the face, which only makes him retract his muscle fibers and get serious. So serious, in fact, that Deku then says it's on a whole different level and that he was just toying with him previously. He was then defeated by a mental app Deku in his quote-unquote 1,000,000%. He actually then later reappears in the series, like I said earlier, and where he fights Yoshindo, defeating him easily, but Shindo's vibrations were able to shred his muscle fibers, leading to Vigilante Deku being able to just one-shot him and put him away really quickly, leaving him with basically no further feats to help his placement, as he's unable to even make Deku sweat as he easily avoids his attacks. I definitely think Muscular, if given the chance, would give a top 15 ranked hero a real difficult fight, but as of now, I think he belongs at the bottom of this tier. Next, I have Gentle. Gentle in his earlier showings is generally a pushover compared to other villains, being bested by a Deku at 8%, even after gaining a quoted dozens of times amp. Note, dozens of times being somewhere between 24 and 96 times, though it could just be argued that the amp quickly whittles away. I disagree that this was the case in this fight, as he actually was able to get stronger as the fight went on, but I mostly disagree with the multiplier. I feel as though somebody who was comparable to 8%, gaining 24 times or more power, would have certainly ended the fight right away, whereas Gentle failed and went on to lose the fight eventually, even when it was stated that he continued to get stronger through the fight, and Deku never once went above 8%. Though he does return in the war and is somehow far stronger as he defeats an entire prison of escaped villains, and he comes to the fight to perform one of the greatest raw feats in the series, I think, as he arrives to the battlefield and the entirety of UA High School is falling from the sky. Under the Love Amp, he's able to halt its free fall with a trampoline move, making a large portion of air elastic, as his quirk allows him to do, completely stopping a falling high school. Put my boy Gentle in sky high, he basically solos the verse. He also was able to perceive Deku tackling Shigaraki, a feat towards his reaction speed, though he did say he barely was able to see it. The question is, does Gentle have anything that could potentially hurt the likes of Muscular? No, not necessarily, but I think his defensive ability and elasticity quirk allow him, alongside his better speed feats, would allow him to just completely avoid Muscular, kind of like the fly in the T-Rex thing, where he can't really hurt Muscular ever, but Muscular can't touch him ever. I guess you could argue that he could make Muscular hurt himself, but I doubt that's even viable. I just wouldn't feel comfortable scaling Muscular above him on the basis that he has higher AP and durability exclusively, when Gentle has good feats in his own right and is obviously just way faster. Not that speed means everything, but in a versus battle, speed does make up a very big chunk of importance in a fight. Again, these rankings within tiers are not 100% objective. They aren't based on matchups, they are interchangeable, so it's fine. This is just where I think Gentle should be, personally. If you disagree, that's fine. You know, again, interchangeable, it's fine. And then here we have Overhaul, previously one of the stronger villains. Overhaul has the ability to end a fight with a single finger. His base is slower and weaker than Mirio. He's able to react, but he's constantly getting beat the hell up without any issue at all. Even without a quirk, Mirio is able to wipe the floor with him. But when he does get his first fusion form, he's able to fight Deku and even avoid a 20% attack by predicting his movements. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention his spikes and ability to weaponize the environment is way faster than his physical speed. In his second fusion, Overhaul is able to fight a fully 100% Deku, though he can't match him in speed, not even close. But he was able to take several hits from this Deku and has the ability to destroy and reform his own body to reduce any damage taken, basically giving him regen. With his spikes scaling to the likes of 20% Deku, it's hard to rank him much higher as his speed is a big part of why his arsenal is effective. But with his abilities and durability, he is definitely amongst the more powerful villains in the series. The main issue with him though is just that he doesn't really scale higher than 20% Deku in terms of speed, even his spikes, which are his fastest thing, and he kind of needs to touch you to be able to win the fight. Next is Getten. I'm putting Getten here in this next spot. He's a bit of a strange one. He's able to fight Dabi, whose flames are stated to surpass Endeavor's time and time again, and Dabi's able to fight Endeavor and Shoto, who are comparable in firepower. The fact that Getten's ice is able to be relative to Dabi's base flames without any other power-ups is super impressive, but he also later fights Mount Lady, which is kind of an anti-feat for him. As you'll see later, Dabi is a force far exceeding the levels of petty pro heroes. Not to downplay Mount Lady, she definitely held her own against Gigantomachia for a little bit, but I'm just saying this fact would definitely make me reluctant to claim Getten's as strong as Dabi, or even state that he's relative in all regards, especially considering Dabi does have much more powerful moves in his arsenal that when we see him fight Getten, he doesn't really use. Also, it was noted by Getten himself that Dabi has issues with resisting his own heat, so this could have just been Dabi overheating at this point and being kind of nerfed when he fought Getten. Though it is funny that Getten brought this up, pretty ironic as Dabi actually has resistance to cold, a part of his quirk inherited from his mother's ice ability, which ironically is a connection the two had without their knowledge, as Getten is actually a cousin of Dabi in the Todoroki kids, which is something that was revealed to us way later in the series, and I just thought it was funny to make of note. But yeah, Getten's pretty strong. I think at this point we're at about the high-end tier of strength. You can put him, if you remember earlier, we talked about Moonfish hurting Gang Orca. If you think that feat should be taken at completely face value and that Gang Orca scales to high ends and Moonfish therefore scales to him as he's able to hurt him, then I'd say this is about where Moonfish will go. Maybe below Overhaul, above Gentle, or in that range or about. Next we have Ritastro, of course stronger than Getten. He's the leader of the Liberation Army. He's able to fight and awaken Shigaraki and later fight Edgeshot. He's not really able to land land a hit on Edgeshot, but when he uses an omnidirectional attack, he's able to land a shot on him. And after his defeat, it is shown that Edgeshot did take significant damage from him, or from the fight with him at least. Edgeshot, of course, being one of the strongest heroes and being able to fight high ends and even damage Shigaraki, a complete Shigaraki at that. He's also able to stop an empowered Dark Shadow, but his little peg legs break, so it kind of makes the feat look bad because he kind of just gets thrashed. But when it came to just his upper body strength, he was able to hold him off for a bit. A stark contrast to Moonfish, who completely got violated by a weaker Dark Shadow. There's not much to say for Redestro. He has the AP, but he lacks in terms of speed, especially after losing his legs. He can amp himself a lot with the Claustro, up to 150%, but he gets slower when he does so. Obviously, if Overhaul or somebody like that gets their hand on him, they're just going to one-shot him. But I'm not entirely sure how Redestro would stack up to Overhaul in terms of speed. If you think he scales to Edgeshot to any degree at least, then he would just be faster than Overhaul. But I think this ranking is fine. I'll leave the speed up to Imagination. Again, interchangeable, interchangeable, interchangeable. And yeah, on to the next, we have USJ Nomu. He is the Nomu we see in the USJ arc, obviously. He scales to a weakened All Might. He's able to completely match All Might punch for punch. And he even made All Might acknowledge his speed as being quick. He also had a quirk that allowed him to take more hits with his shock absorption. And on top of that, he also had regeneration that all the high ends have. I won't hang up here long. There once was a time where I defended USJ Nomu against high ends tooth and nail. But at this point, it's pretty clear that high ends are just stronger. Even the ones who aren't complete, they're all just stronger than him. It's been stated over and over and over. USJ Nomu's only there for one fight. He scales to All Might, weakened All Might at that. So there's not much to really touch on. Next, we have another group ranking. We have the high-end Nomu. I know I said earlier that Getten was getting to like the high-end level, which is true for the near high-end, who are at the bottom of this tier, or this level rather. But again, this is the group ranking. I'm breaking my own rule. So yeah, I'm going to be ranking every high-end save for one in this ranking. This group includes the near high-ends we see fighting fodder heroes, and also the ones that Mirko fights when she breaks into the lab. High ends are time and time again stated stronger than all Nomu, including the USJ Nomu. Near high ends are able to be taken down by large groups of heroes, but we don't know much about their quirks or style of combat, and we don't really see the fights. So for all we know, the reason for their demise could be based on constructed counters to their quirks, could just be because of overwhelming number. We never really know fully because we don't see these fights. Also, those near high ends don't have the capacity of free thought like other high ends, the ones who fought Mirko, for example, but they should be the same in terms of physicality, speed, and strength. The high ends Mirko fought in particular would be a level above those near high ends on the basis that they do have the capacity for independent thought, but these Nomu that Mirko fights have not reached their testing phase, according to the doctor, and are slightly weaker than the Nomu that Endeavor fights. Hood, who is in our next slot, he's the high end Endeavor fights and is stated to be stronger than Endeavor and on par in speed with Hawks, who is one of the two fastest heroes. He's generally narratively implied to be the fastest, but I think it's up in the air between him and Edgeshot. They're both pretty fast when it comes to them being on screen. And based on the statement of, I guess, travel speed, Mirko isn't far behind them. There isn't much to say about him besides he's stronger than every other Nomu, as he actually went through his full testing cycle and was able to effectively kill Endeavor, if not for Hawks being there as backup. And it literally took a plus ultra or mental amped Endeavor using his ultimate move to put him down. I think it's pretty clear that he's stronger than the rest of the high-end Nomu. And he also fights the strongest hero in Endeavor, so yeah, I think that's a perfect ranking for him. Next, we have Lady Nagat. Nagat's able to fight Vigilante Deku in 45%. She's able to land multiple shots on him, and he says that even Bakugo's howitzer is nothing in comparison to one of her normal shots. It should be noted that Deku did have his danger sense that helped him realize bullets were coming, but even 45%, he's still fast enough to react and avoid her bullets, as even though a person has precognition or even future sight, they still have to be physically fast enough to avoid incoming attacks. It should also be stated that she is also physically strong while using her sniper for melee. She is able to elbow Deku in the gut and damage him in his 45% full cal. Using Faujin allows Deku to completely blitz the bullets with full 100%, implying that a normal 100% Deku would also blitz the casual bullet to the same extent. It also took a full 100% attack to destroy her sniper, and also keep in mind this isn't even her fastest shot, as she later shoots Shigaraki from several kilometers across the island of Japan, even while severely weak and after escaping a hospital bed. Should be known that in her prime, she worked for the Hero Commission, undertaking the same under-the-radar missions Hawks took, leading me to imagine her being a high-ranking hero and, of course, in that top 15 ranking or so, similarly to Hawks, of course. But that's irrelevant, as she's able to put up a really good fight against Deku, and has a really good speed showing in her bullets, hitting Shigaraki, of course. So yeah, I think Nagat definitely beats high-ends. Obviously, it's going to be weird considering they have regeneration abilities, but barring those regen abilities, I don't see how a high-end would really do much to her, especially considering that most of them just get taken down by fodder heroes anyway. But yeah, again, not really based on matchups. I just think she's really strong. And then we have the top of the top 15 tier. We have Gigantomachia, the ultimate Nomu, as the Nomu as a concept were based on him. Gigantomachia is considered a calamity above all others. Compared to the Nomu, they are just foot soldiers next to Machia's strength. He far exceeds Registro, as stated multiple times, even by Dark Shadow when he wasn't even doing anything. Geten's ice and Dabi's flames are child play to him. He can fight for 48 hours straight against the League of Villains, shrug off Mount Lady. He destroyed tens of cities just by traveling in a straight line, and he's even faster and more destructive underground digging. He has a bunch of quirks, including one that increases his size, one that makes him strong as his morale raises, one that makes him not able to feel pain, and a bunch more. He has 7 total quirks, making him a demon on the battlefield. There isn't much to talk about with Machia. He's consistently been portrayed as like this game-changing, natural disaster-like threat that immediately flips the momentum in the villain's favor every time he's activated. He's not really someone that I think any hero can take down one-on-one, besides maybe the very top like Deku, and maybe even Bakugo now, who really knows. I do think on an individual level, as far as AP and destructive ability goes, he should definitely break into the next tier, but I think the next tier just might be a little bit too much for him. Obviously, giant characters like this are always going to be portrayed a certain kind of way in the media, so it is weird comparing them to like, normal sized people sometimes. But you'll see later when I get to the number 2 ranked villain on the list that when faced with higher level threats, Machia actually is just child's play to them. It may be arguable for those at the very bottom of the next tier, but I'll touch on that in a second. As we get on to the final tier, the Symbol of Fear tier, the villains here are on the level of the likes of All Might and All For One, of course, with those two being the baseline for this tier. So at the very bottom of this tier, I'm just gonna have I'm gonna break the rule again and have an all-encompassing rank for the movie villains. 9 in Wolfram, they scale to 1 for all, 100% forms. Wolfram scales to like weak All Might, so he's pretty sucky, even below high-end tier. And then we have 9 who scales to Deku and Bakugo using 100% 1 for all. And it was stated that it took 2 1 for all users to beat him, so I guess he just scales above Wolfram to some extent. I'd say 9 ranks somewhere near Gigantomachia, whereas Wolfram definitely ranks below him. And Fleckturn is the villain of the 3rd movie. I could care less where he scales. I haven't even seen that movie, and he actually seems pretty weak, but he does have a quirk that lets him reflect anything, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen the movie. The reason these aren't individually ranked is because I don't want to go watch the movies to gather screen caps. They suck. They should stop making them. Not really, but anime movies really aren't my thing, especially when they're canon and they don't add anything to the story besides like nothing characters. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Let's get on to some actual rankings. At the bottom of this tier, we have Toga and Twice. I do think Toga is a bit stronger. The reason they're ranked together is because what makes Toga so strong is Twice. Toga, if you are not aware, has the ability to turn into Twice and just do everything Twice can do. So all of his abilities apply to her. Though as individuals, I do believe Toga is far greater in terms of physical ability, and most importantly speed, with Twice only having real showings against an early series Todoroki, and Toga consistently scaling to students in the war arc like Ochako, and she's even able to sneak up on Deku at one point, but he was alerted by Danger Sense. When talking Twice, we talk a lot about potential, as we don't see him use most of his most powerful parts of his arsenal. Twice can use Sadman's Parade, which is basically infinite cloning of himself as he clones himself, and each clone clones himself, and each clone clones himself infinitely. With more and more clones spilling into the world, swarms of clones are able to crush and outnumber even powerful foes. Though if an opponent is fast enough, they can stop it at the source, as we see with Hawks when he fights Twice and ultimately kills him. Toga takes it to an even further level with Sadman's Legion, in which she also creates clones of the people whose blood she has, including several heroes and students. And I would imagine each of those clones who are clones of Toga transforming into Twice can also use those students' quirks, as Toga can use the quirks of anybody she transforms into. We also know that Twice can create doubles of anything and anyone in whom he knows the exact information and measurements of. He even claims that he can create 20,000 clones of Dabi, who I'll touch on in just a second. But just let that sink in. 20,000 Dabis. Not to mention his ability to create Shigaraki and other League of Villain members. He could potentially create thousands of Togas, who could then become Twice and create thousands of clones of Toga, who became Twice. This one isn't something we really see in the series, as Twice isn't alive by the time Toga uses his quirk. But just an idea I'm throwing out. Not to mention 20,000 Shigarakis and the vast devastation they can inflict on the world. I think it's clear that when doing these sorts of things, Twice and Toga could even beat Gigantomachia, as obviously if you make a clone of somebody with a strong enough quirk, there's not much Gigantomachia can do, especially in the face of Shigaraki's decay, which would just instantly obliterate them. But yeah, if you didn't know Twice and Toga was this powerful, this probably is pretty surprising to you. But yeah, they're pretty strong. On to number 3. As said a bit ago, we're on to Dabi. The third strongest in my opinion, able to clash with Endeavor's flames, and his flames have been stated numerous times to have more firepower as indicated by his constantly blue flames, whereas Endeavor's flames only turn blue sometimes in the anime, I think, and it only does that when he's using like super condensed flames, obviously. Dabi or Toya has enough heat packed to devastate high ends and even Shigaraki and All For One, both of which have been greatly reduced by the fire of Endeavor, with Shigaraki needing to regenerate his skin and muscles, and All For One even being turned completely to ash. At the end of his fight with Shoto, his brother, he was able to start manifesting the dormant ice half of his power, copying his brother's phosphor technique, which combines both hot and cold, and which he used to reinvigorate himself after defeat. He's able to use all of Endeavor's moves, likely at a way higher level of, these include the Hell Spider, Flash Fire Fist, Jet Burn, Prominence Burn, and more, which are all moves he doesn't even prepare to pull out against Getten, which is why I scale Getten so far below. As I did state, he scales to Dabi's base flames exclusively, as of course Dabi did hold back a good deal, or was too weakened to actually pull that stuff out as he was already overheating, possibly. Ultimately, he has a self-destruction ability, which is induced by a buildup of thermal energy from heavy usage of his quirk, and this has been stated to be able to burn everything within a 5-kilometer range. That's an entire 3-mile radius in which everything will be burnt to ash. He's able to keep with the high tiers in speed, and his flames consistently are shown to be able to burn Endeavor and Shoto, who of course have fire quirks himself, and unlike Dabi, actually have resistance to fire. So basically any feat you see Endeavor or Shoto perform basically are just going to scale to Dabi. At 2, I do have All For One. Early in the series, he's on par with the weakened All Might who eventually defeats him. Later returning, he's able to rewind himself with a drug made of Ares quirk, getting rid of his old and eroded body and returning to a prime form. While Shigaraki ran the ones with Deku, All For One was able to fight Endeavor, Hawks, Mount Lady, Gigantomachia under mind control, Tsukuyomi with a full power Dark Shadow, and several other students. Even in his old beat up form that he fought All Might with the first time, he was shown to be stronger than Best Genius, Endeavor, and Edgeshot. But in his prime, he was so strong, he was even able to one-shot Gigantomachia, which is insane. He did get mogged by Dark Shadow at one point, but immediately after that, he was able to send Dark Shadow flying. So even though he said it was an attack he must avoid, after becoming younger, he was able to immediately dispose of him. He later defeated the group, going on to fight All Might for the final time in his support suit, who of course could fight with All For One for a time, before being defeated and eventually saved by Bakugo, with All For One eventually dying to Bakugo somehow, as he continually de-aged before turning to a weird little baby. But it is implied that he was in some sort of negative mental state. But yeah, he would eventually just be rewound and reduced to a baby, and then eventually out of existence. He has the greatest arsenal of abilities in the series, from spatial manipulation, fire, lightning, and other elements, teleportation, fear manipulation, and a lot more. I don't want to ramble on about All For One's abilities, because I do want to make a video of him in the future, maybe him versus Sukuna, or something of the likes. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that he's a solid number 2, especially considering he lost to a prime All Might, who should be weaker than a prime Deku. Leading on directly into number 1, I'm gonna make it quick and just wrap it on up because I don't want this video to drag on unnecessarily. Of course, if you're even remotely caught up on MHA, you already know this. Shigaraki is the strongest villain. He has the true All For One within himself. I'll keep it brief as he is the character with the most widespread knowledge on his feats at this point. He's stated to be on par with an All Might in his prime physically, meaning speed and strength wise, as well as durability. And he's able to fight Deku at full power, who has a stronger one-for-all than All Might ever had, with the addition of speed amplifying quirks and other abilities. He's able to fight the likes of Endeavor, Bakugo, Deku, and the entire group of high-tier heroes, even while having his quirk temporarily erased by Eraserhead. He is stated to be the perfect Nomu, and is in the narrative said to be the ultimate villain, symbol of fear, the final boss. It's not really worth deeping completely, as I'll just be here all day talking about how cool Shigaraki is and how powerful he is. But if you would like to see me go more into detail on this character, head down to the comments below and just leave a little video request, and I'll be glad to touch up on some of these characters in greater detail. We do have some weird stuff going on right now in the series, with All For One taking over his mind and body currently in the coming chapter. So we'll see what comes of that, but as of now, this is the order I'm set on for the villains in the series. And if you disagree, feel free to leave a comment, spark up a conversation. I'm all open, I'm all ears. I didn't really do this power scaling thing for a long time, so I'm just now getting back into it, having a little bit of fun. But if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe if you would like to stay tuned to more videos in the future. But without further ado, it's been North. I'm out.